possibly. But two of us did some trips. I went to South Africa and Ozzi as well for different kinds of activities. Um, I'll invite also maybe Paul from Jamaica if he's in with us because he's doing a book festival in Jamaica. He might want to tell us a few minutes about what's happening in Jamaica. Now, my trip to South Africa was really to support my partner, Margaret Busby, who was invited to as a keynote speaker to African Writers Festival. When they found out that I was actually an activist around gender-based violence, they also found some things for me to do. So I spoke at the University of Johannesburg on violence against women, on ending violence against women. Now, when we were invited, Margaret was invited by Barbara Masekela. Some of you would know of Hugh Masekela, who was a famous musician from South Africa and a fierce critic of the apartheid movement, exiled and doing his work in the Americas and in the UK and other places. So Barbara invited us to be at that writers festival. Now, as I said, I spoke when the university found out that I did work with perpetrators and that I'd also trained young men, because it wasn't my first trip to South Africa. I trained young men in Alexandra Township to work with the perpetrators a number of years ago. So they were very pleased that I was there and that I could speak about it. But I also mentioned that I was there as an observer to the elections because Caribbean Labour Solidarity were invited as observers. I went with the then president of Caribbean Labour Solidarity, Gaston Taylor. On the first day we were there, actually, we arrived in the evening. Next morning, we were nearly killed or injured in some way because we were close to a bomb that went off. The ANC office was bombed. We felt a blast from the bomb. 10 people were killed and over 100 injured. As a result, I was drawn into helping people and so on who were coming out with various injuries and just dazed from the shock of the bombing and so on. I took many pictures. I had a camera with me. I took lots of pictures of the event. Nelson Mandela came down next day to hold a press conference. And I managed to get into that press conference where I took many pictures again. And I took some of those pictures with me on my trip, which I presented to the university for the archives. And I've just had word from the university that they would like to do an installation to celebrate the 30 years of the end of apartheid. So that would be going out, I think, in July. So I'm very pleased that they're able to use it in that kind of way. And politically, in the papers, generally, there was, just horror stories of violence, especially violence against women, corruption by the government, and other kinds of crimes and really horrific stuff that's going on. And it's very depressing, with especially at the time, load shedding, as they call it, was in progress for a number of years, which is like blackouts, we call it in the Caribbean. People losing electricity. There are a couple of programs I saw on television where people were very angry that they're losing food and things are rotting and that kind of stuff. And so the government is very unpopular. I hardly met anybody who felt the ANC would actually win this upcoming elections with any sizable majority. The general feeling is that they will be into some kind of coalition, maybe. So I think a lot of this enheartenment really about how the ANC has performed over the last 30 years or so. And then to crown it off in Johannesburg, there was problems with water supply. So even more dissatisfaction and anger in terms of the progress people feel they've made since that elections in 1994, um, which, as I said, I was an observer to. Um, and I think that's about it, really. All right. Apart from that, in Johannesburg is where this festival was held, the literary festival, which was amazing. Many writers, many people turning up for events. And then we went on to Durban, where there was more another writers event happening. And one of the keynote speakers there was um, Nelson Mandela's eldest daughter. Um, and she's written a book about her dad, and I think it's the first book written about Nelson Mandela by a woman. Um, so we had an opportunity to meet Makawezi and, take some pictures with her and exchange connections and so on. So again, useful contacts in South Africa for us. I think I'll stop there because we got a lot to discuss here today, and I know um, we'll stay with South Africa for now, and I'll invite Ozzy to take the floor. You had a different kind of trip, I think, with a trade union. I'm not sure. You're
Yes,
jealous.
yeah. Thanks a lot, comrade, and good afternoon, good morning, comrades all. Yeah, I was actually in Cape Town. I was there with the Alternative Information and Development Center and the Global Labor University, where we're working on a major international project on just transition and climate justice. And but it was my fourth trip to South Africa. My previous visits actually have been linked to some of the political developments in South Africa. So I'll be kind of short, but yeah, I want to just endorse completely what Luke said. And if that, I mean, he was in Johannesburg and Durban. I was in Cape Town on the other side, and it's the same. It's exactly the same. There is talking to all of the comrades on the ground. There is the feeling that ANC is not going to do so well in these elections. In fact, in the last elections, they would have lost ground. Um, they won only something like 57.7% of the vote, right? As compared to when they first started in 1994 in terms of the democratic elections. So there is the feeling that they will need a coalition. There's a great doubt that they will be able to muster 50%. A lot of talk about the rise of what we call the alternative left. The economic freedom fighters did very well in the last elections. They gathered some like 44 seats. Unemployment rate continued to be extremely high, 30.1%. The corruption scandal around Zuma, the energy crisis with Eskom, etc. But I want to just quickly, in terms of my own personal experience, to go a little step back as to when I first took notice that things were changing. And it really happened in 2014 when I attended the NUMSA. I don't know if comrades are aware, as the Metal Workers Union, they held a major international meeting. And I attended that meeting. And at that meeting, they had already decided to leave the alliance. They were demanding that that COSATU, which is the South African Federation of Trade Unions, leave the alliance of ANC, the Communist Party of South Africa, and COSATU. And they eventually left. Then they were expelled. But at that meeting, what struck me was one, that there was a general feeling. There were like over 1,500 delegates from across South Africa. It was the feeling that the Freedom Charter was abandoned and that the new National Development Plan was really a neoliberal plan, and that the alliance itself had moved away from the National Democratic Revolution. And what was really highlighted was, as a turning point, was the Marikana massacre, which took place in 2012, where some 40 miners were killed. That was what was shared in and around that period, in that time when I was there, was that Marikana massacre was a turning point, because what it did, it showed that notwithstanding the aspirations of the end of apartheid, that the state was still willing to massacre workers in that way for and acting for and on behalf of the mining company. It was a platinum mining company. And therefore, right after that, because that was in August 2012, right after that, in 2013, that was when EFF was established. In July of 2013, and then by December of 2013, NUMSA had already part ways. So you began to see a real fracture, and it had to do, my sense from what people were sharing, is the feeling that the current administration really have shifted away from the ideals of the Freedom Charter and the National Democratic Revolution, so that there is now an increased feeling that the EFF is going to do well along with some other parties. But interestingly enough, notwithstanding Zuma's the scandals around Zuma, a party was launched, the MK party in KwaZulu-Natal, and he had a huge rally. I mean, it was surprising. So that is our next contender, and there's a lot of talk about this new party. I just saw recently, 2 days ago, Princess Zulu endorsed the party. She was a lifelong activist with the ANC, so she has shifted gears. So what you're seeing is the ANC fracturing, basically. A lot of the even stalwarts who were very active in the anti-apartheid movement are moving towards alternative political formations. In terms of the crisis, oh, and let me also mention the Zondo Commission of Inquiry was a very damning inquiry into the state capture and corruption, which had become endemic within the state structure. And the ESCOM crisis, really, because that is the one that touched people every day. These national blackouts really was affecting so many people. And a lot of it had to do, again, with the policy of the ANC. So, especially those neoliberal policies. So in 2001, ESCOM was instructed not to invest in new power capacity to meet the growing demands, and that they would shift towards these what are called IPPs, all right, independent power producers. So that policy has ended in abject failure. And now, a lot of people are suffering as a result of that. So when you put all of those things in the mix, this year's election is going to be very, very, very interesting. But I guess my takeaway is the difficulty any party would have in this neoliberal world to hold true to your ideological roots, whilst at the same time trying to negotiate with powers, private capital, both nationally or local bourgeoisie as well as international capital. It's very, very difficult. But in the end, it's always ordinary working people that pays the price and carries that burden. So the people of South Africa are going to go to the polls and they will make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that, Ozzy. And I think, you're absolutely right in that. And I think one of the difficulties there for Zuma was, I think they froze his account or something. So he didn't have access to funds to mobilize and already among the party. There might have been some other legal challenges as well about him running.
Yeah.
But the party has formed, so there's some issues there. What I'll do, I'll give people an opportunity to maybe ask us a couple of questions, because I think maybe we won't have as many reports as I hoped would happen. So if anybody wants to ask a question, you can raise. Oh, we've got a hand up. Stephen, you want to come in with your Stephen Howard?
Yes, good morning again. Yes, good morning, and thanks for recognizing me, Mr. Chair. Two questions. I didn't hear much being said about President Ramaphosa, nor EFF President Julius Malema, who apparently is campaigning throughout South Africa, and he seems to be having stadium full of people. And when he launched the campaign to run last year, the stadium that he rented out to have that was like it was packed. And I haven't heard too much about. You did mention load shedding, but I didn't hear too much about the land reform that Julius Malema is putting in place, whereby he's giving landowners the opportunity to either remain in South Africa, or if they don't want to and they want to pack up and leave, they could. But he will be possessing the land, since they don't have any deeds or titles to the land that they possess because they attained it illegally. And since in some cases, something like 10 to 20% of the land that these white landowners, Boers, possess being utilized, with the other 80+% being underutilized, and that being taken over so that they would then be leasing the land instead of just owning it without proper ownership papers. Can you talk a bit about that? Because that seems to be a big selling point that Julius Malema is pushing throughout South Africa. Thank you.
Good.
Well, I didn't mention
Thanks,
him.
Stephen. Yep.
Yeah, thanks a lot,
Can
Stephen.
I
I didn't mention.
yeah.
Sorry, Luke, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, let me go in there first, because I think we deliberately didn't have wide-ranging reports into what was happening, because this wasn't the main topic. And we're conscious that Haiti would take up a great deal of time, and we expected to. We wanted to, as the main focus of this meeting. So we didn't have any real preparation for big. But the mention of Malema, from some reports I saw when I was there, although he pulls big crowds and so on, there was some talk that he's only really polling about 10% or somewhere in that region. I saw many posters in my trip around. Actually, I photographed some of them driving in cars around Johannesburg with his photo. So he's running a really good campaign, I must say, because I didn't see any other parties, and of the 100 and so parties that are running, maybe I saw 3 different kinds of posters, including the ANC posters. So the campaign is on. And of course, land issue, is there, and there's other issues too. I've chatted with some people who feel that since the end of apartheid and they had the truth commissions and so on, a lot of people feel they haven't received justice. So there's huge issues, and which we might want to touch on at another meeting. But yes, if there was a shortfall there, Stephen, is because we deliberately didn't intend for this topic to be a very long one. And I see Paul is here. Welcome, Paul Ward. You were one of the people I was thinking not turning up to maybe do a report.
Okay.
I know that. So if you can afterwards, maybe a 5 minutes or so, tell us about what's happening around you in Jamaica.
Okay.
But I'll give you I'll give Ozzy, you get a chance to respond to Stephen. Couple of minutes.
No, I think you were correct. I mean, I think this meeting is really for Haiti, and there are plenty. Trust me, there's a lot more we could have said, but we chose not to. We just wanted to give a general overview, and I ended my short report as a way to kind of get into Haiti, because I think it's a real issue. How do we deal with the local bourgeoisie and international capital and the influence that they have on the politics of countries? I think that is, I wanted to use a sort of theme that we can sideway into the Haiti discussion.
Yeah. And thanks for that, Ozzy. And I think importantly as well, I felt that the wider issues that are happening in the world at the moment is almost impossible to ignore what's happening in Gaza at the moment, and the genocide that we're seeing before us on our television screens, although people are trying to play semantics, is it genocide or not? And we're seeing the way people are being starved, the way people, homes are being destroyed, and communities and hospitals and all education centers, 30,000 people murdered in their homes, basically. And although, what happened on the 7th of October, we don't celebrate or we don't agree with, and we think it's right that we be critical that women and children were killed in the way they did. But the resistance from the Palestinians, is to be admired in some ways because, they've faced a onslaught now for 6 months, totally overpowered, totally collective punishment for the people in Palestine and supported by some Western governments and the USA in a fashion that is losing them, reputation loss, I think, throughout the world. And one wonders why they would continue to support. Fortunately, we see some of the European countries beginning to support the call that the masses of people around the world have been making is a call for ceasefire. We, CLS, we have demonstrated almost every other weekend in London against the occupation, against the genocide that is happening. And we repeat that call for ceasefire. And we call especially on America to stop arming and supplying these weapons that are killing people in these huge numbers and continues to. We don't believe for a moment that the Americans can't stop this war with one phone call. And there might be wider political, geographical, political reasons why they're supporting this onslaught. But I leave it there because I think, we don't want to distract too much from the discussion we're about to have. And Haiti, of course, is something that is at the top of our agenda all the time and will always be. We recognize the heroic role that Haiti has played in abolishing slavery in their country, the first successful slave rebellion anyway, a great example to all of us in the Caribbean, and one for which they're being punished by the European countries who have colluded in one fashion or the other to keep Haiti desperate and poor and subjugated. And now that the Americans have so discredited and they can't do the usual invasion, they're looking for surrogates from the Caribbean. And we think it's disgraceful the way some of the Caribbean countries have responded to the desperate situation that Haiti is in. And I know that in Guyana, Haitians were imprisoned and expelled. They're members of CARICOM and should have been treated a lot differently. Jamaica, as well as turned a blind eye to the plight of Haitians turning up on the shores. So there's a lot that our leaders in the Caribbean need to take on board about what Haiti has gone through, why it's gone through, what's being experiencing for the last 200 years. And we call on them really, one is to refuse to collude with the Americans in presenting any invasion force. But I'll stop there because I know we've got some excellent speakers in this issue who can speak to that much better than I could. But we'll ask one more report and then we'll move on to Haiti. As Paul is here and I can see your name, big up, Paul. Can you please take the floor for a few minutes?
Yeah, good morning, everybody from Jamaica. Thanks for your reports on South Africa. I must say, with Ozzi's comment about the neoliberal challenge, hard to take a different route. I mean, it's very much the case in Jamaica, and of course the Caribbean, kowtow to America and the bigger economic powers. It's very distressing. In related to that, of course, is the Jamaica's lack of outspokenness on both Haiti and Gaza. What I've got on the screen here, there's a few of us tried a bit of a demonstration outside the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Not only does Jamaica not speak out in support of Gaza, but a few weeks ago, pictures in the paper of Jamaica welcoming a new Israeli ambassador, and it made us very sick. So we're not like we were when the original fight against apartheid in South Africa. People felt proud here, but no longer, and that's where we are. In terms of what else you did mention, Luke, I see if I can bring that back again. That one there. Yeah, we have a, can you see a screen? Am I sharing a
Yes,
screen
we
okay?
see it.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Margaret Busby visited, along with Luke, visited me last year after Calabash, another big festival in Jamaica. And it gave me the idea of why can't we do one in St. Mary, which is a completely opposite side of the island. I mean, my motivation is partly because I've never been to Calabash because I can hardly afford to. It's an expensive event and far away. But the other motivation was to try and make it a more open, down-to-earth event. So in fact, there's 3 weeks' time and we have 50 presenters, 9 of whom are high school students. And that was very much what we were hoping, that we could mix up established writers and then youngsters who are coming up. And Margaret, I can see you're a part of the group. I've been meaning to write to you to ask if you could send a very short video at some time so we can use it at the start of the festival. Okay. So there we go. It's 3 weeks' time, a lovely setting by the seaside. We do have a speaker from Tobago, Ozzi. So that's very nice, and a couple from Britain and America. The last thing I'll say in terms of Jamaica and Haiti, and you said that Jamaica turns a blind eye to Haiti, Luke. Of course, it's worse than that because the second boatload that arrived a few weeks ago were not even given the privilege, if it's that, of applying for asylum. They were quickly sent back without even given a chance to apply for asylum. So it's quite disgraceful in terms of what goes on in Haiti and in Gaza. Very, very disappointing. So I'll leave it there and thank you very much, all of you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Paul. And that's a very impressive poster you've put up there. I like the look of that.
Well, that was
And
done.
only
That
only
was done for
story
me
we
by
can't be there.
Yeah, that was done for me by a voluntary effort by a young woman involved in the pantomime in Kingston. Very nice poster. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that report. And one to look forward to. If you can't go this year, well, I don't know if Paul is thinking of a bi-yearly or yearly, but certainly
we hope to live
that
stream it too. We do hope to live stream it if we can make the technology work. So, and I'll send a link to CLS sometime.
And we'll circulate it. So thank you, Paul, for that down there in Jamaica. And also for, highlighting the treatment of patients in Jamaica. One of the stalwarts of the Caribbean, some of you may